Introducing the newest of our content packs, the RM Easiteach Secondary Content Pack. It covers language arts, science and math, and is all within a comprehensive content pack that's menu driven, allowing you to really use activities from one subject to the other. So if the science teacher wants to take advantage of some math resources, they're able to do so. So I'm going to go to open my secondary content. And you'll notice that the menu has a real kind of different look and feel from that of the elementary content packs. And that's because students of this age group really demand a different style in terms of the resources that are delivered. They've got different expectations. I'm going to go to my high school language arts, and this focuses on reading, writing, speaking and listening. So all of the strands that are taught within language arts state standards. So let's go to media reading, and particularly analysis of authorial purpose. Now, I have a dream. These are all links to lessons, again, learning journeys within the content packs. They start with shared objectives, so I can really reinforce what's going to be taught during that lesson. And as we move from screen to screen, there's a lot of audio. So the audio is built into these Easiteach screens, meaning that you can have the character reading out and enlivening that piece of text. So you'll notice this is Martin Luther King's very famous speech. So we're looking at the different rhetoric techniques within that particular speech. So the nice thing about this slide is we can get students to think about the different rhetorical devices being employed. So reading the definition, they can then drag and drop whether it's a metaphor, an example of antithesis, a parison, and we can discuss as a class whether it's correct. None of these answers are designed to spring back because it's a whole class teaching activity designed to promote discussion. But I can actually go back and I know that there's an example of expressing one thing in terms of another with which it has something in common, and I'm pretty sure that that's a metaphor. So I can then go back to extract one, where there is an example of a metaphor, and get the students to use the highlighting tool to actually draw the rest of the class's attention to that section of the passage that is an example of a metaphor or antithesis, whatever it might be. Moving back to page 1 and going to our topic index, there are teacher notes as well that support every single lesson just in the same way as the elementary content packs. But what I would like to do now is to draw your attention to the student activities actually within the Easiteach secondary content pack. And this is because, and we're going to stick with media reading, and we're going to speak your mind. The pedagogy changes slightly from elementary to secondary in that there's more emphasis on small group and independent work. There are many flash activities embedded within the Easiteach secondary content pack that are designed to support the Easiteach lesson that's just been delivered. So we saw the introduction to Martin Luther King to rhetorical devices, and this is something that we would then launch to get the students to really extend those techniques and bring them into a practical application. It could be something we do at the board, or it could be, if we have a classroom license or site license of Easiteach, that we actually distribute it and get the students working individually in pairs, in small groups, on the machines or laptops in the room. So I'm going to go to start, and we get our instructions. So like I said, it's deliberately intended to extend what's gone on in a teaching circumstance. Click continue. Then I get a variety of primary, secondary, tertiary resources with which to base my speech on. So I can go and look at voting rights, a section on that. I can listen to an interview with Martin Luther King or with Rosa Parks, and I can play that, pause it, and for any students hard of hearing, I've also got the text to go with it. Once I've reviewed those sources as a class or as a student, gone are the days where you send them to Google and ask them to look for stuff and they spend 90% of the lesson on irrelevant stuff and 10% on actually something that's worthwhile. There's a notes section, And all of these resources are structured in the same way. So this is only one example, but each student is encouraged to write notes, so we can actually type text within the text panel. We can annotate straight into the notes section, and they can begin to plan their speech by thinking about what they've learnt from each of the sources. The guidance tab, it gives me his speech, how to use the activity, as well as some guidance for rhetorical techniques, because I really want my students to take what they've learnt from the lesson and deploy it within an actual speech that they're going to write. My speech. So we have a writing frame that expands as we write within it, because a lot of students are intimidated by a blank page. So hopefully what you'll see is how we've translated Easiteach lesson to support the way that middle school, high school teachers work and teach their students with that small group independent instruction, and how we've given you resources to really achieve that. Okay, we've got time for one science lesson, and you'll see the focus is on life science. Now, we're ever expanding our content strategy at RM, so what you see now will certainly be added to, expanded, extended in the near future. This is just content that's within our content packs. You can view a separate presentation on this webpage looking at www.myeasiteach.com. That's the online repository for our hundreds of thousands of users here in the States to upload and download easy books that have been created by colleagues. So I'm going to go to photosynthesis, and we're going to take a look at one of the several experiments, or virtual experiments I should say, within the science pack. So let's look at gases involved in photosynthesis, and we're going to go to the rate of photosynthesis experiment. So, like in a textbook, I get the explanation of what we're going to do and what kind of equipment we need, but I'm going to take that experiment off the page, make it engaging, make it realistic using the technology. Now, I'm not saying that this should replace the experiment being done in a lab or in real life, but how can we expect students to test their own hypotheses if they only see that experiment once? Technology is a brilliant way to get them to test those theories, as well as really extend the barriers of learning. So we can change the light probe, make it brighter, and the bubbles that are created then demonstrate the rate at which photosynthesis is occurring. So clicking on the timer, but before I do, I'm going to go into split screen mode, and you'll notice a spreadsheet. So clicking on the timer, the students will then count the number of bubbles created by anaerobic respiration and the rate of photosynthesis, and the number of bubbles they count within a 1 minute period with that particular light intensity, they can then record. So we've got 6 in terms of the light intensity, and then let's say that we've counted 12 bubbles in a 1 minute period. So the fact that I can graph those results straight away, so I can highlight my cells, I can bring up my spreadsheet toolbar, and I can go and graph, either with a bar graph or a pie chart, those results, and even enlarge that as well. So it's treated as an image, so we've got the experiment going on virtually, very interactive. We can record our results and we can interpret them all from within one easy book. So as I said, that's an example of one of the several virtual experiments within the science pack. The secondary content pack is made up of hundreds of lessons that cross the language arts, the science and math. And as I said, we'll be hoping to add to that and introduce social studies in the very near future.